Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's meetup and workshop. This is a follow-along workshop where we are going to be finding and fixing 5 common accessibility issues. This is a meetup with the Baltimore WordPress. Meetup recordings are available in about 2 weeks or so, and they will be published on our YouTube channel. The links that are sent in the Zoom chat during the meetup will be listed at the end of the meetup recording posted on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube and you're like, where are the links from the chat? They're at the end. This is an informational meetup. Please use the information, products, and services that we show at your own risk. Just because we are showing a website, plugin, theme, or anything else is not an official WordPress endorsement of it. Above all, keep it family friendly, as many of us, including myself, are attending from home. We will be doing our best to follow the community standards, which means that if you break these standards, we will evict you. No spamming or spammer-like behavior. We have people of all different skill levels and backgrounds, so no judgment for people who are at a different place than where you are at. And generally speaking, don't be a jerk. We have 3 sponsors to thank before we dive into our main materials. Our first sponsor is Anfira.com, and they help companies that have challenging WordPress issues get them resolved and stop their having all their frustrations. Our second sponsor is Easy Alley Guide, and Easy Alley Guide helps people who want to learn about accessibility. They have a bunch of tutorials, a course that is almost done for rapid remediation of websites. And finally, we have OB Digital Consulting. OB handles all of our YouTube production, and we thank them very much for their sponsorship. If you are looking for help with your YouTube or other video production, contact them. And the links for all of our sponsors are in the chat. Some quick admin before we dive in. Open your Zoom chat. If you have kind of a question along the way, you can just drop a question mark into your Zoom chat. We will also drop links into the Zoom chat as we go. If you have a question during today's workshop, since it's a follow-along workshop, you can go ahead and just use the hand raise feature or just put a Q in the question mark symbol into the chat. To get started with today's workshop, we have 2 different websites. The first is w3.org and the second is framer.com. I will just quickly drop those 2 into the chat. The first one, w3.org, will be our WCAG success, and Framer will be our failures. We're going to talk about 5 really common issues that show up in every single lawsuit and show up on tons and tons of websites. And these are the ones that we are going to be finding and fixing on today's workshop. So first, we have to find out if the website has the issue, and then we're going to fix it. So I will show you what a success looks like first on W3C. This is going to be for our skip to content link. I put my cursor into the URL bar, and then I hit the tab key on my keyboard. Note if you are using certain browsers, you may need to hit escape. So if you hit the tab key and you suddenly see like suggested links popping down from your browser, press escape once, possibly twice, and then hit tab again. And that should get you to your skip to content link. If you don't get a skip to content link here on w3.org, you may need to go into your browser's settings and set up keyboard navigation. Just do a web search for the specific browser and operating system that you're using and that you want to enable keyboard navigation. Generally speaking, using the Chrome browser, you should be fine. So once we see our skip to content link in the upper right-hand corner, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press the return key on my keyboard. I don't think I'm focused. There we go. I'm going to press the return key on my keyboard, and you'll see that I jump downwards to the hero section of the website. And that is exactly what I wanted to have happen. Now we're going to pop over for our failure. Here we are on Framer, and we're going to hit the same tab, and we go to the logo. which is not a skip to content link. And the rule is all of the common repeated content, which is basically the header on every website, needs to be skipped. So that's our failure. Now you can go ahead and test this out on your own site. If you're using WordPress, which this is a WordPress meetup, you can use the accessibility checker plugin and then settings. And they have a skip link. So if your website does not have a skip link at all, you can just check this box to add the skip link. If you have a skip link and it doesn't work, that's a bit of a longer discussion because we have to figure out what is going on with your theme and why the skip link isn't working. Most of the time, you either have it and it works or you don't have it at all. So we are going to go ahead and give you a minute or two to go ahead and test these out on your own. And if you have any questions, well, I will give you about 2 minutes. In the event you missed the testing website URLs, I will just show them here. Okay, Remy asked a question in the chat. This is not a follow-up meeting to any previous meetup. This is an independent standalone. So we're just going to be testing these 5 specific criteria. So I'll go through how to test each one and then give you guys a few minutes to test them yourself. And I'll show you what the fix is and allow you to at least get started on fixing them on your own websites. So we are going to go on to our second test. Our second test is focus visible. So here we are back to the w3.org site. And you can see when I hit the tab key on the keyboard, then we will pop over to the different links. They are shown with a yellow background and then a bolded black underline. So that is visible and clear, so people can see what exactly is focused. Over here on Framer, the first couple links are showing up okay. But I just hit the tab key after that sign up and my focus disappeared. I have no idea where it went. And I have hit tab yet again. I still have no idea where it is. After the third tab, I finally get somewhere. But again, we hit tab and we're just kind of wandering around to various different places. It's frequently going off screen is where the focus disappears. So that would be our failure. If you have a failure with this, then the answer is going to be the CSS. Let me just quick pull it up. I did not have that one pulled up. All right, I'm going to drop this link into the chat. It is a GitHub for a style.css file. And I'm just going to look for focus. Here we are. This is the text, and I'm going to drop that in the chat as well. If you don't have a focus state, the quick and easy way to fix it is by using this code here. This body, anchor, focus, visited focus, and button focus, and setting an outline of a focus color and setting a border that is dashed white. And the reason why we use a dashed white border of all things is for a very, very common issue. Here we have a website and it has a blue background with white bordered buttons. If you use just about any focus combination other than the one I just showed you, you will not be able to see the focus border here. On the accessibility checker plugin, it has an option for focus outline. Please don't use this because this resets to the browser default and it won't work in this scenario, which is actually pretty common. So here you can see when they get focus that the outline becomes dashed, which is a visual change. What we're looking for is a visual change, something that can be seen and we can actually see that. That's the only thing I found that really works well on the situation of blue background, white button. I'm now going to give you about 2 minutes to test this on your own, and I'm going to take a look at the comments because Jean had left a question in the chat. All right, Jean asked, should the skip link work on a production site? Yes, the skip link should work on any live website. The only time you don't need a skip link is if you have a true one-page site and there's no content that is repeated on multiple pages. But yes, your skip link should always work. Note that in some themes like Hello Elementor, the skip link is known to not work correctly. The Elementor meetup group did a whole long meetup on how to use and fix a whole bunch of the accessibility issues that come right along with the Hello Elementor theme. So again, I'm giving you about another minute to test the focus state on your own sites. And if your focus does not work, then what you want to do is use this CSS added to your website to fix it. This is using a CSS variable here, which is the Kaya focus color. I always recommend that you set up CSS variables for CSS, but you can also just drop in a blue colored for that. I always set my focus with blue because people expect blue for links. All right, our next one that we're going to be checking is, are links obvious? Here we are looking at the w3.org website, and we can see these blue underlined items. This is wonderful. These are obviously links, blue outlined buttons. Again, obviously a link. All of this is very good because we can clearly see what is and is not a link. Now we're going to hop over to Framer, where we have a ton of content that is shown here. It's moving when I move my mouse over it. I think this is clickable. A lot of this looks very clickable. So I'm not sure what exactly I can click on, where necessarily the clickable areas are for various different things. So there's a lot of content and it's not always clear what is and is not clickable. As a general rule, when it comes to usability, if I hover on it and something happens, then I assume I can click it. If I hover on it and nothing happens, I assume I can't click it. So what we're looking for on our sites is to kind of just look at it from an overall view and see, is the link obvious or not obvious? And as a general reminder, people will always assume that if it's blue text, it's clickable, because on all of our social media sites, our search engines, and the vast majority of web pages, whenever we see blue text, we think it's clickable. All right, we are going to move on to the next item, which is headings. So here we are going to be testing our headings. We are going to hop over here to the w3.org. For this one, I'm going to use a browser extension called Wave. This is a free, easily available browser extension. You can grab it from the Chrome extension store. You can also use the WebAIM website and use the Wave tool from there. I will drop the link for that into the chat. So you can also just drop web page URLs into that tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hop over to this tab called Structure. And here within this, we can see the structure and headings of the website. In the header section for the navigation, you are allowed to have headings prior to your major H1. So for example, on this site, they have headings in their menu. That is allowed. They need to be H2s. And I mean, technically, I guess they could be H3s, but they should be H2s. Then we expect to have one and exactly one heading 1 in the main part of our page. Within that, we will have H2s and potentially H3s, H4s, and it needs to make a nice structured table of contents. It should not jump around randomly between different heading sizes. And Wave will actually give a little alert symbol if it sees jumping. So here we can see then they have a sidebar section marked as a side, and it's got news and then some articles within it. So this is all the structure that we expect. Next, we will hop over to Framer. And again, we will turn on our Wave tool over here. And we'll go to the Structure tab. And here we can see that we have an H1 followed by H2 and then H3s. So this top part is good, but then you'll see that we hop down here and we have an H2 immediately followed by an H6. And you'll see that Wave puts a little indicator and warning on it saying, hey, you randomly jumped. That's not good. You'll also see that they, for example, have the Learn More link as an H3. One, generally speaking, your link should not be headings. Two, your link should not say Learn More. So these links have a lot of issues, but you can see that the headings are out of order. So now you can go ahead and test these on your own sites. And I'll give you about 2 minutes to go ahead and do your own testing. And while I have this up, I can also show you the order tab of the Wave. And in this order tab, it's going to tell me a whole bunch of interesting things like all of my links. So you'll see here at the top, it identifies that there is a link with no accessible name. Screen readers can pull the entire list of links for the website and basically just get this kind of a list. And so here you can see we have divs and links that are duplicating these login and sign up. Copy logo as SVG. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then, of course, you can see a ton of Learn More links and a ton of things with no accessible name. Links that say background. Then over here on the w3.org, if I take a look at the order tab there, you can see it's got the link for the skip to content, and then it's got specific buttons and links, and these actually make sense. For example, security. Okay, well, it's a link about security, a link about internationalization, and other items. All right, next we are going to move on to text contrast. This is generally one of the highest number of errors on a given website. So there's a few different ways that you can check for contrast. One, here on the Wave tool, you can hop over and look for contrast errors. You'll see here on the w3.org, it has 0 of them. Over here on Framer, we can see that it's identifying 17 contrast errors. And it will then display where it found the contrast error. It's kind of a little confusing sometimes where it's finding some of these. One thing that's really important to know about Wave and its contrast checking algorithm is that Wave will identify potential contrast failures. So you always have to verify that what Wave identified is real. So the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to open my inspector, and I have another browser extension installed called Axe. This is again a free tool that you can install on your websites. And I'm going to click Scan Full Page and give it just a minute to scan the page. So the Axe algorithm for checking text contrast looks for definite failures. So you'll see here that Axe has identified 7 contrast failures, while Wave identified 17. The difference is Axe, these are going to be definite color contrast failures, whereas with Wave, they're potential failures. So that's an important distinction. Now here, when I click on the Wave, it will allow me to go over and actually look at the code on the page to hopefully identify what is going on and help me find this thing on the page. tells me what the current contrast is, information about the font size, and what it expected the contrast to be, which is very helpful. So I always start with Axe as my first tool for checking color contrast because it gives me the definite failures. Then I will take a look at Wave for the potential failures. And then finally, I will do a manual review of the website. So for example, I can see here that this text, perplexity, cradle, Miro, that text is definitely too light. There is a keyboard stroke in any Chromium-based browser, Command, Shift, and C. So it's like copy, but with a shift. And when you do that, it will allow you to hover over elements. And if it can compute the contrast, then it will give me this accessibility information with the contrast, and it will give me that little exclamation point if it fails. So I really like to use that one, and I use that all the time in a lot of places to check color contrast. So again, that is on the keyboard, Command Shift C, Windows Control Shift C. It's copy, but with a shift. All right, I will now give you a few minutes to go ahead and check things on your own websites. I did want to point out that a really common area where it will miss contrast errors is on input fields. So for example, an input field might have text on it, and that text might fail contrast. Placeholder text almost always fails contrast, unless it has been fixed in CSS. So MSC is asking in the chat, well, once we found the contrast error, how do we fix it? So the first part of the fix is figuring out a better color combination. A quick rule of thumb is any color you can have pass with either black or white. If you have both colored text and a colored background, then you might need to, or you might want to choose some other options. So I usually use this quick contrast tool. So for example, if I have a contrast, let's say I've got peach text or peach background with white text. This is actually a website I was working on, and it did in fact have a peach background with white text. So I knew that I could pop over and do black as one option, or I could leave it as peach, and I could change that peach to a dark color and here. So all I do here is I just move down and to the right on this color area, and that will make it darker. So if I'm trying to use like a white or an off-white, I will want to go darker. If I'm working with black, let's quick hop over to black. I will want to move up and to the left to get a lighter colored background. And this will allow me to kind of set some different background choices. Perhaps the client wanted something a little softer, so I would go with kind of a charcoal gray against that peach color. And this contrast checker will tell you when you're good on AA. So the first part of fixing the contrast is identifying what color combination you're going to use, your background and your foreground. So here I can just, let's say I had set this really light color for my text. You can see here that that's a very light color, hard to read. And then here in my customizer, I would update this, and then I would be happy with it, and I would go ahead and publish those changes. I'm not saving those changes though. So go ahead and take a few minutes on your own sites, and if you have any specific questions regarding the text contrast, go ahead and drop them in to the chat. Pointed out that a lot of clients like orange, and yes, orange is a significant challenge with clients. They're like, I want orange. And orange doesn't really work well with a lot of colors. So you can either kind of darken your orange up to something like this, which will pass with white. This is actually pretty darn readable. So usually that's what I do, is I just darken their orange up until it passes with white, as they usually want the orange with white. Emily mentions that teal is a particularly challenging color, and I fully agree with you on that. Teal. So on this one, you got to go, you just keep going down and to the right on whatever their color is until you get a sufficient contrast with white. When we're talking about blue and bluish colors with black, that's actually really hard to read, even though you can technically get it to pass. Like here, technically this is passing at a 4.6, but this is actually still very difficult to read. It's just how the human eye perceives blue and black together. So when I'm dealing with blue and black, I typically aim for close to a 10 contrast ratio. Anything over 7 and you're probably doing decently, but when it comes to blue on black, I really do typically aim for about 10. That's just a particular color combo that the human eye finds challenging. All right, so that was the find and fix workshop on these 5 different items that we can find and at least figure out a solution for pretty quickly. The skip to content, focus visible, are your links obvious, headings, and text contrast. I did want to mention that on the accessibility checker, if your links weren't showing up as nice and obvious, you can use this force link underline, and that will help to force the links on your web page to be underlined, which will help make them a whole lot more obvious. As for example, from this page, people expect links to be underlined. People understand that if something is underlined, then it's a link. Emily asked a question in the chat. She has a client whose developer made the skip to main link animated. Failure or not? It depends on whether the link remains animated or if it's just an entrance animation. To be honest, this is an essential accessibility feature and it should be boring, just like captions on a website are black background, white text, nice and boring. If the skip to content link has a continuous animation, that would be a failure on 222, which is you can't run a continuous animation for 5 seconds or more without having a stop ability. So anything that is continuously animated would fail that. Mar, you are very welcome. So if anyone has any, we are moving to open questions now. So if anyone has any general questions about accessibility, any websites they were testing that they're not sure on whether something's a pass or a fail, you can drop your question into the chat or just drop a question mark if you want to speak your question. We do not typically talk about Google Analytics in these meetups. I don't use it, well, I use it a little bit, but not in depth or anything. So that's not really a topic of mine. I could consider it for the fall when we take a summer break from meetups and then we come back in the fall. So I could put it in as a speaker request for the fall. Emily is asking about newsletters. Yes, everything that we just shared also applies to basically all electronic communication. So emails, newsletters, websites, all of that. If you have a video in the homepage, for example, yes, that is an accessibility failure, again, on that 222 criteria, because it is something that moves and stays moving for 5 seconds or more. It is required to have a pause or stop button to make it go away. Adrian asked if you resize the actual window to be half a browser, half a Word doc, etc. Is the reformatting of the visible window covered under WCAG if it becomes less tabbable. That is under the reflow requirement, and that requires that a website can be zoomed to 400%. So if you take a standard website, present it at 100%, and you make it half the width, it would cover that requirement. It basically also says you have to work on mobile and be responsive and all of that good stuff. So that would be a failure, and everything needs to work, including keyboard navigation, when you reflow a website. Asked, do you want to know about the browser extensions to check contrast? Sure. So the browser extensions to check contrast are going to be the Axe extension web browser Chrome Store. So this is going to be the Axe DevTools. That is the one that I always start with because the Axe tools is designed specifically to make sure these are guaranteed failures. And then there's also the Wave browser extension. And again, this one will have maybe failures in it. All right, I will leave the questions open if anyone has any more questions. If you're looking for WordPress support outside of when we're having actual meetups, I'm going to drop a couple of links into the chat. The first is the meetups information page, which has some different resources. And the second is a WP Help Desk support website. As I mentioned earlier, we do take the summer off from meetups, and then we'll be resuming in the fall. Our first fall meetup is scheduled for September 8th at 11 a.m. Eastern, and that will be one of our classic Ask Me Anythings